And think about it from the other side. Imagine you're sitting on the other side of that presentation. That person is saying, "Aren't we wonderful? Aren't we great? We've done this." And there's very little about you.
G'day, this is Peter Anthony from NextGen Professional for Engineers, and I'm joined by Damien Andrews. G'day, Damien.
Pleasure to be here, Peter. Always wonderful to chat about NextGen X Sales Professional.
So we're talking obviously to engineers, and we're talking about one of the major issues that we often find engineers have when they're selling, and that is um, talking about yourself. I see countless so-called credentials presentations from big engineering firms, and it's full of the big maps of the world and the dots on different cities about where the locations are, how many staff you have, all these multidisciplinary approaches you have to solving clients' problems, and it's a lot about you. And one of the reasons that doesn't work is they don't really care how big you are or how broad you are. What they care about first is how much you uniquely understand them, their projects, their environment, the sort of outcomes that they'd like to achieve with the particular engineering solution that you can potentially develop for them. Have you found something similar, Damien?
100%, Peter. At NextGen X, we find this all the time where people focus on themselves and they're wondering why their presentation is not coming across. Now, I think it comes from that thought process of build it and they will come. But that's not how that works. You need to be able to connect with people at a deeper level. And one way to connect with people is to actually talk about them, understand them. And one of the first things we do with clients that we work with at NextGen X is to go through a presentation that they've done recently and count how many times do they reference themselves and how many times do they reference the client and what the client needs. And it's quite alarming when you go through that and see how many times you're talking about yourself as opposed to, talking about the other person. So I'd encourage people listening to pick up one of your presentations, have a look at that, and think about it from the other side. Imagine you're sitting on the other side of that presentation. That person is saying, "Aren't we wonderful? Aren't we great? We've done this." And there's very little about you.
Yeah.
And that's where it's really important to create that relationship, because if they're not talking about you, they're not connecting with you. And that's what you want to be able to do. Is that your experience as well, Peter?
Yeah, absolutely, Damien. And it's curious because you think about a client brief, whether a client's briefed you or whether you're responding to a tender or a bid. Uh, it's they're looking for something very specific and very unique. So it's a matter of you not replaying the brief back to them, but you replaying the brief back to them in a way that adds a unique understanding of that particular brief, and then packaging up the firm in a way that is uniquely relevant to that particular set of needs. For example, it's not much point you sharing expertise in tunneling and road design if this happens to be a pitch for an army barrack.
Mm.
It's unless there's roads and tunneling as part of that barracks. It's a matter of saying, hey, or it's a transport brief, and they're looking for a multimodal transport model, and you're talking about your expertise in CAM or hydraulics. It's a matter of saying, hey, here's a unique understanding of your particular needs, and how here's our skills, our expertise, and a way that we can uniquely use that expertise to deliver that particular engineering outcome to you. So it may be that you're only talking about a fraction of the firm. You could be talking about 5 or 10% of the firm, but that's the difference that's going to make the difference in you winning that work or winning that bid. It's not about selling; it's about understanding and about broadening and deepening a relationship by demonstrating understanding. That resonates with you too, Damien?
Yeah, exactly, Peter. And my experience with working with NextGen X and the clients that we've worked with is where you make subtle shifts in how you present what you're doing and the bids that you put out. but it comes from understanding what are the real needs. And there is the stuff that's on the surface, which is really important. You don't put in, you focus, if they're building a tunnel, you want to focus on your tunnel experience. But where I've found that we get bigger traction is looking beyond that, looking to deeper things that are really important. Specifically, government, for example, working with government, there's a really strong need for compliance, need for focus on safety. Those kind of are two key elements. If you focus on that for the client, if you understand what those needs are, if you take the time up front to really ask the right questions, and that's what we take you through in practical exercises with Next Gen X, is showing you how to ask those questions to get to those deeper needs that are really, really important, that are critical decision makers. Safety is a critical decision maker for government organisations with the tenders that they're assessing. Has a big chunk of the score that they use to assess the tenders. So being able to ask the right questions to get that information, and that's part of what we teach you at Next Gen X. Can you explain a bit more, Peter, about the practical exercises we take people through?
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about questions is a great point, because if you think like you're responding to a tender, for example, uh, often there's a curtain that falls, as you know, when the tender's first released, which means you can't ask any questions. So it's about compliance. And you think, well, that means I need to have the relationship before the tender's released. And you think about big government work, big defence work. You think, well, I need to have that relationship before the tender it even hits the desk. So it's building the relationship, understanding who the decision makers are, what the decision making values are, what the values mean for those particular decision makers, and how we can translate that into a unique understanding, and write a value proposition that starts the bid response. So often that executive summary gets written last in a bid. It should be written first. Here's what we're doing in a summary form, and then when you've got multiple authors, those multiple authors can then pull that their piece of the tender together that articulates that particular version of that value proposition that you're delivering. That work's got to be done before the tender's out. If there's no tender, it's a little easier because you've got a bit more time and potentially more access. But it all begins and ends with your relationships with the clients. And part of what we do at Next Gen X Professional for engineers is, if you don't know the clients, we show you how to identify them, how to identify who potentially good ideal clients are for you, and then how to approach them, and how to build the relationship to a stage where you can begin pitching for work. And what we'd like to do, what Damien and I would like to do, is to talk to you. If this sounds of interest to you, talk to Damien, talk to I. Our contact details are at the back of this video. We'd like to understand what you're looking for, and then practice what we preach in terms of making a recommendation to you that uniquely hits your particular sweet spot in terms of building fee income for your firm. And if that's the case, we'd love to talk to you, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.